Hello and welcome to my patch notes rundown for the 23rd of October. This week's update introduces immense nerfs to Necromancy, primarily its conjuration power. I'm mainly going to go through the numerical changes without giving much input, as I would not only need to test numerous bosses extensively, but also reconstruct rotations to adapt to the nerfs. Without further ado, let's get right into it. Conjure Skeleton Warrior. Auto attack average damage reduced from 30% to 25%. Rage passive changed from an additive 1% ability damage per stack to a multiplicative 3% damage increase per stack. This is a big nerf. Initially, the skeleton will deal 16.6% less damage and comparatively dealing less damage with every accumulated stack, ultimately leading to 20.5% less damage when the skeleton is at the max 25 rage stacks. I don't really know why they decided to change the additive damage increase formula to a multiplicative one, because I find it much harder to read and quickly access as shown on screen. Conjure Putrid Zombie. Adrenaline cost reduced from 50% to 0%. Base duration reduced from 45 seconds to 42 seconds. Movement speed increased from walking to running. Passive poison average damage reduced from 30% to 10%. Passive poison proc interval increased from 1.8 seconds to 3 seconds. This is a colossal nerf. The Putrid Zombie was a conjure that would do a ton of damage passively over a long period, but now it easily sits at the bottom as far as single target goes. In contrast, it's now pretty good when it comes to AoE damage, since the conjure no longer requires adrenaline. Another notable nerf is the fact that Putrid Zombie no longer procs Cinderbane gloves, but since poison damage is convoluted to calculate, especially when Cinderbane is involved, I've decided not to include it in the numbers, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. It's also important to mention that it's definitely worth using the command ability at the end of the zombie's duration. Now, this is only on paper, because if your zombie is about to die, then your ghost has been dead for at least 12 seconds. And it also need to not interrupt your core rotation, nor can a timing fall under downtime of the monster that you're fighting. Command Putrid Zombie. Ability can now be cast without a target. This currently doesn't work, and if you don't have a target, it will deal absolutely no damage. Commanding your zombie to blow up without a target is like blindly throwing at a dartboard on whether the zombie will be in the desired position, hence why I've previously suggested that zombies' command targeting is made to be similar to the detonate magic ability. Conjure Vengeful Ghost. Adrenaline cost reduced from 30% to 0%, passive heal reduced from 175% to 125%. I've never enjoyed the heavy emphasis on sustainability in RuneScape through constant auto attacks, so I was actually fond of this passive effect and how powerful it was. I assume this was done to compensate for the fact that the heal is now calculated after debuffs, but I was hoping that it would remain the same value and not a 13.6% reduction. Command Vengeful Ghost. Adrenaline cost reduced from 70% to 0%. Duration reduced from indefinite to 30 seconds. Change the bonus damage effect from 100% of base damage up to a cap of 35% ability damage to 10% of base damage up to a cap of 20% ability damage. Okay, so this is by far the biggest nerf of them all. The Haunt debuff almost doubled the damage of all small hits, which included things like conjurations and bloat. Even though this effect was incredibly powerful, I actually liked it since it affected all styles and not exclusively Necromancy. This meant that if Necromancy ever fell heavily out of favor in terms of DPS, it would still be used within group content as a support role. Looking at the conjuration damage changes, it's a massive drop, 63% less damage. Now, it's very important to note that if you average all Necromancy abilities, it would be nowhere near 63%. Let's take Raziel for example. I went through the PvMe rotation before and after, calculated the exact total damage, translated it to damage per minute indicated by DPM, and it ended up being a staggering 29% less damage. One feature that I really don't like about this change is the fact that you'll have to now constantly upkeep this debuff, which isn't an input that is meaningful at all. Very similar to using overloads, vulnerability bombs, smoke cloud, and more. These are just buffs that you upkeep for the simple sake of dealing more damage. There is no decision making or thought process here. Life transfer. Duration increased from 20.4 seconds to 21 seconds. Change from maximum life points to base life points. This is a good change as you were previously punished for using tanked necromancy armor when wanting to use life transfer. Now you take 38.1% less damage. Invoke death. Duration has been increased from 6 seconds to 12 seconds. Fix an issue that caused it to trigger multiple times. Fix an issue that allowed the insta-kill to reflect back at the player. Another great change. It wasn't fun being on such a tight timer to apply the debuff, especially considering Conjure, Command, and defensive abilities do not apply it. Also, for entities that reset their HP, like Phase 5 of Virago, Queen Black Dragon, and the Zuck Conduit, Deathmark will expire when once used. Previously, it would remain as a permanent debuff and reoccur multiple times until the entity was completely dead. New ability, Conjure Undead Army, requires 99 Necromancy and Tier 7 Well of Souls talent tree. The ability allows players to conjure multiple spirits at once. The ability can be right-clicked and customized to select conjure abilities. Ectoplasm cost will be equal to double of each included conjure ability. This is a great new addition which acts as a very slight creep in power but mostly benefits the quality of life of not having to spend 3 whole global cooldowns conjuring your spirits. The only concern is the fact that it now further emphasizes the ability to forcefully dismiss your conjurations by removing your offhand and re-equipping it to summon all 3 at the same time. The reason there's incentive to do this is the fact that conjurations do not share similar durations, meaning when your ghost dies, it's better to forcefully dismiss your skeleton and zombie and re-conjure all 3 at the same time versus just summoning your ghost again. On a side note, let me posture a personal preference and an idea to better the conjuring system. I don't enjoy upkeeping conjurations. Having to monitor the duration and timing the use of life transfer is just not fun to me. What if conjures didn't expire as long as you were using necromancy, reducing their base damage but give their respective command abilities more meaning and game-changing power? In the long run, where there'll be more conjurations available than you can summon, I think this will work really well, since you'll be able to customize your playstyle according to which conjurations you select to have by your side. Life transfer instead could also be an incantation that empowers those said game-changing commands that make them even more effective for a short period of time. Continuing with necromancy. Necromancy shields no longer cause conjured spirits to despawn but still can't be used to conjure them. The delay for Vengeful Ghost to appear after conjuring has been reduced from 1.8 seconds to 1.2 seconds to match other spirits. This is currently bugged and not working as intended, so if you're planning on using life transfer right after conjuring your spirits, make sure to wait a tick before doing so. Fix a variety of issues at Queen Black Dragon. There are several serious fixes listed here and I had no idea about any of them. Some of them sound so ridiculous, but I'm glad they're resolved. Remove the passive light source buff from Ensouled and Pumpkin Mask for Iron Man players. Party pumpkins and smashing pumpkins have been made bigger and brighter. Overhead emotes can now be added to the action bar. Except for I have no idea how to do this. So yeah, can someone tell me how to do this? And that's it for this week's patch notes. Even though the past 2 nerf patches to Necromancy have been huge in numbers, I still think Necromancy is incredibly powerful, especially considering the effort that it requires. I've done about 2 hours of Telos now, and my kills went from consistent sub 550s pre-nerf to sub 3s. Being only 10 to 15 seconds slower. I'm pretty sure it remains as the best style at Telos. Anyways, that's it from me. Thank you for watching and take care.